Hello everybody, I have another amazing Web3 founder with me today, Sid from Maple. I'm super excited to quickly catch up on the latest and greatest. So Sid, super quick intro for anybody who's ignorant to not know you, and wanted to hear about the origin story of how you got around to building Maple.
Yeah, awesome, and very glad to be here. So I'm Sid, I'm the co-founder of Maple Finance. So the way to think of Maple is we are a decentralized capital market, effectively built on the Ethereum and Solana blockchains. But unpacking that, the way to think of Maple is it serves lending to institutions, and this occurs through what we call pools, which are kind of like lending businesses or credit funds settled on chain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the space we operate in. So it's institutional lending, serves generally institutional depositors. But what's different about Maple is they have this concept of a delegate. So they're really a trusted party who's managing one of these pools, and they're choosing who gets to borrow from the pool, and they're also helping source deposits. But the origin of Maple was that my background was in banking and a pretty niche area called securitization. So I was doing that for a number of years, but this involved helping lending companies to borrow. So you can see I was dealing with financial products facing lending companies, and then I went from being at a bank to working client side, which meant I went to work at one of those lending companies. And so I had to deal with all these issues as treasurer of that company, including sourcing loans from a bank, managing all our reporting systems, managing the third parties that helped us run our business from a financing perspective. And it was learning all of these multifaceted issues that kind of prompted me, as I learned about smart contracts, to think there's got to be a way to turn automating loans into a business. And so that was really the kernel of the idea that became Maple.
You're right. And so what was the operational challenge that really slowed you down, that you thought putting the workflows on chain would really accelerate you?
A lot of people wouldn't realize this when you're dealing with a bank or a lending business, but a lot of the back-end systems are actually just Excel sheets. So our challenge was you have reporting systems that don't talk to your bank account, and if you're running a lending business, that's really, really important, because what you're doing is you're collecting payments from hundreds of loans, and then you're reconciling them and then sending a report to people who have funded your business. And so that's the essence of securitization. But at a much smaller scale, this problem still persists if you're running a lending business or a credit fund. And so what we wanted to do with Maple was not solve the idea of credit risk by using the blockchain, but it's instead solving the problem of how do you gather capital, and then how do you manage sending out loans and capturing the repayments from those loans. So really what Maple does is it shrinks the operational requirements of running a lending business or credit fund. And what I liken it to, I often use a Shopify analogy, but I think in this instance, perhaps a better analogy is that AWS made it significantly easier to set up start up a company, because you didn't have to go and invest in expensive Oracle databases. When you're setting up a lending business, you have to go and invest in heavy systems that capture and report on your loans. You have to invest in hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal documents to get entities set up, and then also to onboard with banks. And then you have to invest in systems that talk that allow your loan system to talk to banks.
Yeah.
So anyway, all this is to say is that it's a ton of investment to set up and run a lending business, and that keeps a ton of supply out of the market. And so what we wanted to do with Maple was turn all of that fixed cost into a variable cost. So if we are really successful, what we should start to see over time is that the best people who are working at JP Morgan or at Fortress Group, they get bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, and they decide to set up their own boutique lending firms or credit fund-like businesses, and they can just run that on Maple. And the entire cost is just variable. So there's no fixed cost investment for them. They can instead focus on what they do best, which is sourcing deals, underwriting and assessing borrowers, and also bringing in depositors and financing for those pools.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to transform, because I think it's very important for innovative companies to have access to capital markets, and so we're trying to short circuit that.
In a way, what you're doing is also saying, hey, in finance we have these financial assets, which are just series of rules that we've stitched together.
Yes.
And then we decided to call it an asset.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of money flows involved with the asset and ownership rights and transfer rights. And then the rails over which those transactions happen are separate from the ledgers that keep those rules.
Correct.
So now, in a way, the complexity of reporting, complexity of transactions are a byproduct of the bifurcation of where transactions are happening and records are kept. And you're, in a way, going back to the asset and simplifying that.
Exactly. One of the things that occurred to me actually as you were talking then is that you have this spectrum. And so you have traditional finance, or as everyone in crypto calls it, TradFi. And this is where you control neither the wallet, which is the bank account, that's a bank controls that, nor do you control any of the technology associated with the loan. So you can't pair the money or the wallet with loan conditions.
One could even add, you don't even have visibility into the rules of the asset.
Yeah, correct. And then you have the next rung over, which is centralized finance, or CFI. This is where you have a lending business has control over its wallet, but there is not control over the rules associated with the loan. So these are still being governed, by and large, in spreadsheets or very primitive systems at the centralized lenders. And then you have decentralized finance, which is the extreme opposite of TradFi, where you control neither the wallet nor the rules associated with the loans. In decentralized finance, you can put the rules associated with the loans on chain, and then the loan and the wallet at either end is on chain as well. So it's like the furthest point. So you got TradFi, CFI, where you have this mixture where you can control the wallet, but all of the rules exist off chain. And then you have DeFi, where the rules exist on chain as well as the actual transfer of funds.
Absolutely.
And it's that settlement layer that is very important.
Yeah, wonderful. That's the gospel, right?
Yeah.
I love it. So let's quickly touch into the challenges you had. I'm sure the legal product market fit and recruiting are common challenges. We ran many surveys and it seems to be a common pain points that bubble up to the top 4 Web3 founders. Could you share some insights, tools, strategies, approaches that stood out to you? And maybe you worked on something for 6 months, now it's super clear to you.
Yeah. So breaking each of those 3 things down. So you have legal, product, and recruitment. So I'll start with product. And I think the pitfall is that you as a founder, any founder, have a very particular idea of what you think will work. And often, like, if things go great, you run into reality and exactly what you thought would happen happens, and it's received exactly the way you hoped. In most cases, this doesn't happen. And so the best way to mitigate that is that you actually have a lot of opportunities to course correct. So it's like when you fly a plane from New York to London. It looks like a straight line from a distance, but up close, it's actually a lot of little mini course corrections. And so the best way to do this in a product sense is to always be speaking to your potential customers. So with Maple, we had a very particular idea of how it would work. And then we went with a design firm and we said, what does the workflow need to look like? And this is a lot of heavy thinking, but you need to imagine it in exact steps. And then you need to test those steps with your potential customers. And you can do this now with tools like Figma, where you can do a live prototype. So it means you don't have to code anything up. You can have a designer do this for you. And it's just a representation of what using your product would look like. We got so much feedback about what wouldn't work, what was totally unclear. And one of my first recommendations is for any founder, go and talk to your customers, but show them something that is definite and real, because otherwise they'll tell you kind of vague feedback that doesn't actually help you get the product out.
Right.
And it's only in putting the rubber to the road that you can actually see the real kind of key challenges and things that you never would have thought of otherwise. So that's product. Recruitment. If you're a very early firm, you'll actually, instead of putting out job ads, you're actually probably better off going through a recruitment agent, at least for the first couple, so you can land like a really good anchor hire or member of your team that you can build the team around. That's because a recruitment agent is going to do a better job of selling your company to the candidate and selling the legitimacy versus just an ad you post on a job site. You're going to get your company undersold by that ad unless you have a very hyped up reputation already. So that's the second element. But getting these early people right is really important. But you don't need to act as if the right person for team member number 5 is going to be the right person when you're a 50-person team. So you have to you actually have to have in mind that you need the right team members for the right circumstances. So early on, we had a hire who was very good at doing many things and shipping things with very little outside help. As the team scaled, we needed people who were better at working in teams and cooperating towards a shared goal. And so that wasn't necessarily the right fit as we scaled. So that's one example. You've got to have the right team member at the right time. And then the third element is legal. And so I think what people assume is that all lawyers will have the same opinion. They're experts.
There's one right law.
There is one right interpretation of things. And what you find is that even at the level that we're at, where we've done over $1.5 billion in loans, we still get very different opinions from law firms, depending on the personal preferences of the partner. And so what we'll find is we or certain of our customers might replace law firms as they're going through a transaction because the partner is not necessarily cooperative or has a very firm view of how things are. But that firm view does not extend between law firms. So you're replacing the law firm might give you a totally different view. And so what I would tell early founders is make sure you speak to multiple law firms. Don't reposition your entire business based on the opinion of one legal expert.
Right on. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your insights. To learn more, feel free to contact us.
Thanks so much. That was a pleasure.